Okay, today we have a 2013 Toyota Camry Hybrid. It's a 2.5 liter, has a blown head gasket. You can see the customer already tried to do some Blue Devil head gasket sealer on it. So we're gonna tear this apart today and show you how.
Pay for the money.
First step, pull this off. Next, remove that 10, that 10, these three 12s down there as well, these two 14s, 14 there, 14 there, these three bolts as well, and pull the parts off. Don't forget the 10 right here as well. Once you get all these bolts loose, pull these ones out. Slide this out. It'd be easier to just put the bolts back in the original spot if you have trouble keeping track. Next is going to be the bolts right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. You have two 14s and two 12s.
Okay, next you gotta remove the splash guard so you can get to the harmonic balancer and the sensors back there. There's two 10s right here, you can clearly see. And then behind this, luckily this customer's is broken. Behind that there's a little push pin plastic tab. All three of those will come right off.
Now that the heat shield is off, you can take off these 5 12 nuts. On the cross pipe down there, you have two 12mm bolts on that side, two 12 millimeter nuts on that side. And then once that pipe's off, you'll be able to see two of the 14mm bolts. Let's see if I can get it right there. It's hard to, right where my finger's touching, there's one on this side and one on the other side, and the exhaust you can pull out and drop down.
Okay, with that splash guard out of the way, time to take off the harmonic balancer and the motor mount so we can get to the timing cover in the back. Motor mount has three 14s behind this round part. You can see one of them right here. Two others, it's pretty obvious when you're looking at it. So 3 14s and one 19 nut. That's all you gotta take off.
Okay, in order to take this off, there are bolts underneath it, but you have to remove this plastic piece to begin with. You'll see these clips right here. How you take those off is you push down in the middle, and you just pop these up. That's it. Then this whole piece will, oh, so that one's already off. This whole piece will come off. Get to the two 10mm bolts right here, then you can pull this off and out. Drain the radiator. See that white plastic wing nut down there? Just spin that. It's the one that is right there. Just spin that down and the radiator will drain. Take off the radiator cap in order to have it drain a little quicker. Disconnect the O2 sensor clip. Squeeze that clamp, slide it over. Squeeze that clamp as well, slide it over. Remove the radiator hose. Okay, next, gonna take off that clip right there for the AC compressor. Also that one as well. Sorry, that's for the AC compressor clutch. That one's for the AC compressor motor, the orange one. Take off the water pump clip and take off this one right here. That one right there. Take the wires, the 10s that hold them on. There's a 10 here, and there's also a 10 on the clip right here. And then fold all the wires up. Now that you have these wires loose, time to start disconnecting all the other clips. The variable solenoid, the coils, just get a small screwdriver, and cam sensor. That'll allow you to start taking off the valve cover once you get the coils off. They are 410mm, by the way. Move that clamp, pop this hose off, loosen up that 10mm, undo those two clamps, take off the mass airflow sensor. Use a little screwdriver to get that thing out, and pop this off. Pull the box out from the hose. Now time for the valve cover. You have all the 10s on the perimeter, and you have a 10, 10, 10, and 10 right there. And the valve cover will come right up. Okay, now that all the outside bolts are taken off and the inside 3 are loose, I still kept them in there. It's time to pry it off. Have a standard screwdriver. Right here is a good pry point. And there we go. You need 2 hands to pull it up, but you get the gist. Okay, when the engine is at top dead center, you'll see a little notch on the harmonic balancer. A little white notch right there. Hard to see. But have it lined up to the 0. At the same time, you'll have this little dot right there on the exhaust cam, and that mark on the intake cam. Not that one, that one. To set the timing, they just happen to line up easily for us this time. But this is the marks we'll cover later on in the video when we're reassembling.
Okay, with the timing set, we're gonna lock the cams in place so we can take off the whole assembly and not have to worry about it. We're gonna undo the 2 12s here and the 2 10s right here. We won't worry about that one until later. And then we're gonna get a little bit of paper towel, fold it 3 times, so 3 layers, about 2 inches long. Fit them right here under the cam holder. I'll show you when I finish. Okay, you can see the 2 paper towels. Just line this up. Then just do the 2 10s to lock it down. Because when we take off the whole cam assembly, we're only gonna undo the 12s. So just do the 10s to lock it down.
Okay, so you have the 19mm nut on top. Remove that. Of course, this is after we remove the harmonic balancer. We can jack up the engine. It's a simple jack. Engine's not too heavy, so you can actually just put it under the oil pan. Just enough to clear right there. And that'll give you room to get those bolts off from behind and the one up top. Those 3 14mm bolts. Once you remove this bracket right here, that'll give you room to get off the bolts for the timing cover. This whole timing cover does need to come off. This is what it looks like when you take it off. That gives us room to remove the 12mm bolts that hold on the timing cover. You don't need to take off these 10mm bolts at all. That's just the timing tensioner cover. So all the 12mm nuts and bolts going around the whole perimeter of the timing cover.
Okay, quick mention, you have to take out the crank position sensor before you can get this 12 in the back.
Now that you have the 12mm bolts and nuts off, you have 14mm bolts. There's a 1, let's see if I can focus, 1, 2, and there's 2 more on the back. You're gonna have to get your hand squeezed in there to do it though. Okay, take an inventory of all the nuts and bolts that hold on this timing cover. You have 1 of the longer 12mm bolts, 12 of the short 12mm bolts, 2 12mm nuts, and 4 of the 14mm bolts. Once you have these off, then you know it's time to start prying on this. A good place to pry is right about here. So it's gonna feel a little sticky. Okay, to pull the timing cover out, you pull it out through the bottom of these ones. We ended up just removing the motor mount completely, just to make it a little easier. We didn't feel like haggling with the timing cover. Now that the timing cover is off, you can actually see where the timing mark is for the other link. So you have that dot for the crankshaft on the red link, and let's see, dot on the exhaust cam for that link, and the line for that link. That's the timing. You're gonna use those same marks when you're putting it back together. Now time to take off the two 10mm bolts on the timing chain tensioner, and you have a 12 here for the upper bolt on the guide, 12 down here for the lower bolt on the guide, and all the parts can just be pulled out.
Okay, next you got to make sure everything else is off the head. So there's 3 10s right here. 2 of them are ground wires. This is just a bracket that holds the sensor for the O2 sensor clip, or the clip for it, excuse me. Just take all 3 off, it's easier. And then there's 2 hoses you gotta do. This one's kind of hard to see, but there's 2 lines on this lower hose coming out of the head. Coolant temperature sensor, and finally the bracket that holds this pipe on right here. That's a 12, right behind that clamp.
Okay, now it's time to take off the camshaft assembly. Remove that 10mm bolt right there for the clip. Next, you have all these 12mm bolts. Only the 12s. Do not remove any of the 10s. You don't need to. Just remove the 12s. There's one hidden back there. One back there as well. Okay, recap. When you remove these 12s, you can just leave them where they are as long as they're not holding it in. Don't forget the hidden one here, 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 there. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 of them. And then this guy will come up. Let's get a screwdriver and pry this real quick. Okay, good pry point. Let's just get a little grip right there. There we go. And this side right here, you should be able to do it by your hand if you want to. Try to avoid prying inside here. Don't do that. It's gonna be right here is another pry point. But at this point, we can just lift it up by hand and put it in a nice safe place. Next, pull off the rockers, but keep them in the same order, store them in the same order that you pull them off. So just remember, if you have to mark them, don't mark on the wheel, mark on the side over here with a little bit of paint or whatever. You can mark like a 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever system you want to use to mark them. There are 16 of them. So just as long as they go back in the same spot that you pulled them out from, it's good. With the cam assembly out of the way and taking the roller rockers out, remove these two 12mm bolts for the fuel rail, and that'll give us access to the intake bolts.
Okay, now that the fuel rail's out of the way, we can get to these 12 bolts much easier. Just give them a nice turn and work them out.
Okay, there are going to be 5 intake manifold bolts. We got the 2 top ones down. There's going to be 3 at the bottom, 1 at the lower corner on the driver's side, 1 at the lower corner on the passenger side, 1 in the middle. If you see through there, you'll see the extension that I have. You have to reach an extension back and get to the middle one. Going through.
It's a little lower than you'd think.
There we go. It's going to be right in there. See it? I don't know if you can see it, but it's in there.
You'll feel it.
Okay, to get to that lower corner bolt down there, the 12mm, take off the intake, we're going to remove these 4 10mm bolts, pull the throttle up, and just move it out of the way. You don't need to disconnect everything. Just move it out of the way. If you need to disconnect the clip for the throttle, you can do that, but no point in disconnecting the hoses. Just slide it over.
Okay, instead of taking off all the 12s for this pipe because it's on studs, you won't be able to pull it out anyway. We're just going to take off the 10s. There's 2 more in the back right here. Pull the EGR up, and then we can move the intake back anyway. Use a power ratchet to do it. Okay, with the intake detached and the pipes we've done these, and the ECT, we got the EGR bracket mount. There is another 12mm nut holding on these brackets right here for the wires, the wire harness and whatnot. Just use a regular deep socket and a ratchet. You'll be able to squeeze on there as long as you have moved these wires out of the way. It's not too bad, but it is down below. The socket's actually on it right now, so that's what it's gonna look like.
Okay, for the head bolts, it's going to be a long spline, 12mm. Some people call it a triple square or a 12-point Torx. We got this set from Vector Tools. There's the part number right there. And there we go. We're going to loosen it up. We're going to loosen up the outside ones in just a couple clicks.
Hear that? 2 clicks.
2 clicks.
2 clicks.
And we're going to do the same. We go outside, outside, next row in, then the center one's last. And then we'll loosen up a little more each time. On the third pass is when we're finally going to release all the threads. Okay, all the bolts, we did the 2 clicks on each bolt. Now on the second pass, we're just going to loosen up a little bit. It's still tight. And do about almost a quarter turn on each one. About 45 degrees. You're loosening it. You want to keep the tension down. The reason why is because as you're loosening up the bolts, the head naturally wants to come up with a lot of force. And if there's a lot of force and just one bolt left holding it down while it's super tight, you run the risk of the bolt popping up and either breaking or pulling the threads out of the block with it.
Go.
Now on the last pass, you can just loosen them all up before they're loose.
Okay, all the head bolts are out. As you can see, time to pop the head up. Here's a good pry point right here. It's just under this pipe. It'll hold, it's fine. Get it loose, and now I can do it by hand. And here's the head.
And as you can see, this customer used Blue Devil head gasket sealer. So what the problem that arises from doing that is, you see this coolant port right here? Comes like a sludge. It plugs up the radiator. Again, don't use Blue Devil. Don't use head gasket sealer. It's not gonna work. If it does work, it'll just be temporarily. Just for maybe a few days or whatnot. Don't use it. Okay, as you can see what the head gasket sealer does, it creates deposits. You have this white stuff all over here, and a lot of it flaked out. I really don't want to use this head, so we're gonna put on another head that we know is good. It's used. It's already been resurfaced and checked. But ideally, you want to take this head to a machine shop, automotive machine shop, and you get it checked out, have it resurfaced, and if they recommend the valves being lapped, because the valve's lapped, and then put it back on. So we're gonna put on another head right now in a little bit. Okay, time for the head gasket to go in. Ensure that the alignment pins are on the block, so they remain in the block. If they came off with the head, just take them out of the head, put them on the block. Head gasket can only fit on one way because of those alignment pins. And there's that.
Okay, head's on and torque down, but just want to go over the sequence with you. Start in the middle, make the classic cross pattern with all the bolts. Anyway, on this engine, the Toyota 2.5 hybrid, It's 27 foot-pounds first pass, 27 foot-pounds, 90-degree next pass, and then 90-degree again for the third pass. So, you know, 90-degree angled turns on the second and third passes.
Before we put on the cam assembly, we're going to put the intake and the fuel injection and the throttle and the EGR and the AIC all back together. Just reverse the order that you did it already. Okay, when putting the spacers for the fuel rail back in, see there's a longer side and a shallower side. Put it in the longer side going into the head, shallower side sticking up. Okay, we have all the bolts bolted back on for the fuel injector, the intake manifold, the EGR, and the throttle. Next, we're going to put the cam assembly back on. Don't forget to put the rockers on in the same position that you took them off. And we're going to be applying a layer of silicone around the edge here. You don't need to put it on this side, just around the edge. That's the seal. Okay, I got the new layer of silicone on. Of course, we scraped off the old silicone. Also, the old silicone on the bottom of the cam assembly. Time for Jack to place it on.
Okay.
Okay, and we're gonna torque it down, but remember the torque specs are gonna be from the middle facing out. Do not torque these ones yet until after you remove this paper towel, and that's after the timing's already set. Now, in cleaning the surface for the timing cover, use a razor blade to scrape off all the old silicone all around the mating surface. And then you're going to apply a new layer of silicone on the timing cover later.
Okay, anytime after you have the head on, you can start putting these hoses back on and your ground wires and everything. It won't be in the way. But remember, it's just the 310s. There's these two hoses, regular clamp. Don't forget the ECT. And if you removed the bracket for the EGR, yeah, do that too. Next, I'm gonna put the exhaust back on.
Okay, this is the timing chain tensioner. It goes in the engine like this. Don't forget there is a gasket to it. This is how you compress it. If you notice that you push it down, this little thing moves with it. So you want to hold that up, push down, and you want to get this lined up with that. So you come up a few times and then back down. And it's just a little pin. As long as you get something in there that sticks in there and you are able to pull, and you're able to pull it out, that's good enough. Now let's go look at the timing marks. So we talked earlier about how you know the timing marks are good. You see that little dot right there? There's only one on this whole cam. Make sure it lines up with the yellow link. At the same time, this line lines up with the yellow link, not this one. There's only two lines. Make sure it's the smaller one that goes all the way back. And let's bring it down to the crankshaft. I'll have Jack tell you about that.
Okay, you can see the crankshaft here. Yeah, the chain's good. All right, so it's the oil pump is part of the timing cover, so the crankshaft has this square guide on there. On the left side of the guide, you can see another small divot right there. That's the only one on the guide, and it corresponds with the orange link. Just make sure you're looking at it straight on, so you know you're putting the right link on there. See it? Divot, link. There you go.
As long as you have all three of those links, the timing is set. It doesn't matter if it's moved a little bit or not. As long as those links are on the marks, the timing is set. Okay.
Okay, that's where the timing chain tensioner goes, right here. It'll be pretty obvious when you took it off. So once you get it on there, make sure none of the links have jumped. That one is definitely on.
The two up here are good.
Those two are still good. So after you have tightened it with your gear wrench, or however you're comfortable tightening it, these two 10s, just pull the pin and see it push the arm just slightly. As I turn the motor, I can extend it a little bit more, but you don't need to right now. that'll happen either when you start it or after we get the harmonic balancer back on.
Now make sure to take off all the residual silicone. This is the there's no gasket for the timing cover. It's just a silicone gasket. You want to remove all the silicone that was on it, and you're going to put a new layer of silicone on, especially on these parts right here. You have silicone left over there, you're actually going to get an oil leak. On that side and this side. You can place a nice liberal amount of silicone along the whole corner of this. Silicone here as well. You put a nice little bit here and right there. Do not put any on these holes. These are sealed with O-rings on the block.
Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier. This is the oil pump. And you can see these slots. I'll try to get a good angle for you. You can see these flat spots in the middle here. So that's gonna line up with the flat spots on the crank here. So when you're putting it on, they'll sit on any of these 4 larger flat sides. I know it's like 8-sided, but the flat corner sides here, put it on those. It's a little tough. Just have some patience. Try and line it up and picture where it's gonna go and move the oil pump so it'll slide over there nicely. You're gonna have to bring the timing cover in from below here, up, below and up, and go up with it, and then just push it straight on. If you're having trouble, you're gonna have to spin the oil pump slightly and try again. But once you get it just right, it'll go on just easy. Remember, one of these 4 sides, they're on opposite ends. Just make sure it slides right on nicely. Okay, once you have the timing cover on, you gotta pass that oil pump there. Put all the bolts back on. Remember, there's 2 nuts, 12mm, 1 long 12mm, and then 12 short 12mm, and 4 short 14mm. All right, while he's finishing up tightening the timing cover, let's start. Put the intake tube back on, get the air box, remove the paper locking down the cam so we can do the valve cover and exhaust shroud.
Okay, time to put in the water pump. When we took off this water pump, we noticed that the impeller is actually busted. See that down there? It should be attached to that magnet down there. It will still spin a little, but the Blue Devil does this. It locks it up and breaks it. And whoever put this on last time put a needless amount of silicone around it. The customer was informed that they need a new water pump. They insisted that we put this one back on. I really don't want to, but if yours is good, just put it back on. Don't forget to tighten it up.
Okay, we got the intake tube back on. Put on the exhaust, the 412s, as explained earlier.
Don't forget the cross pipe, the 12s on the cross pipe down there.
Already tightened. Yes, a small cross pipe. And then radiator hose.
Next is the valve cover.
And valve cover. All right, time now for the motor mount. We got this one back on. 317s from the bottom. Told you earlier. This one, the main mount. Sorry, bad camera angle. Main mount here. You remember how it went on? Those 14s. Just jack up the engine. Do the 314s, then lower it down. You can move this if you need. As you can see, if it gets wedged on there, just jack it up and move that slightly and lower it again.
Okay, don't forget the engine mount bracket, 2 14s, and 3 14s and 2 12s. Okay, don't forget to put the airbox on. The coils, we didn't cover this because it's pretty much basic. Most of the steps just goes on one direction. Anyways, hard to mess up. This guy, the 210s. Don't forget to fill it up with coolant. Top it out with oil before you start it. Otherwise, it will only run about 30 seconds. Don't forget to have the harmonic balancer on, the splash guard, put the wheel on, and be ready to start. All right, let's see how this thing starts. Yeah, I'm ready. Don't worry about that rattling for the first 5 seconds. That is the timing chain tensioner building up oil pressure and taking away the slack. Engine sounds amazing.